Terminology which seems to be gaining traction at the moment is grey to green, and I think that's quite a nice way of describing it, because this is not about foregoing the engineering performance of structures. It's about enhancing the engineering performance with also a greater range of biodiversity.
Okay, well, nowadays we largely talk about nature-based solutions. And the reason we use that term is because it is highlighted in the Environment Act 2016, and that very much drives NRW's purpose. But that's obviously a very much umbrella phrase for all sorts of things, from the sort of, very, replicating very natural systems right through to, sort of a hybrid approach, and then sort of what I might call green widgets on hard things. When we start saying what we mean by nature-based solutions, then we would talk about working with natural processes, IGGI, hybrid, and ecostructures specifically would get a mention as well. Is the sort of what we mean by nature-based solutions is this and this and this and that. So there is an issue around terminology and explaining what we mean.
Well, we very often call them green walls in our industry. And that's where you'd be growing, well, through organic matter behind the wall. You'd be growing, it's usually plants, fauna, flora, that type of thing. You call it, biodiversity and what have you. Might not sow the seed, but if you called it something, and I don't know, you've got to think of something quite innovative there. Green marine. I don't mean IGGI is just an acronym, isn't it?
Yeah.
Green grey. What does that mean to most people? Green grey. Oh, we're greening the grey, are we? Ah, now I get it. But it doesn't roll off your head first of all, first of all, think, greening the grey, right?
Obviously, legislation is there's quite a lot, and there's quite a lot of different angles. So I think in terms of thinking about how you can get wider benefits in a scheme, Wellbeing for Future Generations and the Environment Wales Act, both of those are quite good anchor points. I think the thing that's probably more actual teethy is the bit that now there's a bit of uncertainty about, isn't it, in terms of the Water Framework Directive and thinking about other drivers in terms of protected habitat. But I'm sure post exit of the EU that there will be comparable legislation, and ultimately, coastal squeeze and the issues of protected habitat means that there is a mandatory requirement on Natural Resources Wales and other coastal protection authorities to be able to demonstrate how they are mitigating that coastal squeeze element. They must do it.
I mean, let's face it, in terms of what legislation is coming through, in terms of what we do, it's slow in the uptake. There's more to do with the technical sides of it rather than the actual environmental ecology type of things that are going to come through first.
But I wonder whether there could be something stronger that comes through, perhaps from the Environment Act, through into our marine licensing legislation that says, if there is an option here to do something which is better for biodiversity, better for ecosystem resilience, we want you to deliver that as a preference. What have you considered? You've got to sort of talk your way out of it rather than it being, oh no, we had a quick look early on and there was nothing possible. But they are fantastic pieces of legislation. They say lots of the right things. They are heading us in a good direction of travel. But I think you can use both the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and the Environment Act to support whatever argument you want to make. And they're not clear enough. You can balance. You can say, well, I've ticked these 6 boxes here. I've done this and this and this and this and this. So therefore, I'm really, really compliant with what we're trying to achieve here, even though there's a big negative also in the mix. And the same with the sort of Wellbeing and Future Generations Act. You might be really, really good for some aspects of it and really appalling for others. So, and I don't think we've yet got to a point where there's a clear process for how things are sort of weighted in decision making.
There isn't sort of like a whole sort of arsenal of different design products or different design strategies which are on the shelf, which are sort of fully formed and developed. And so, it's, we're aware of things which have been done, but it's not the norm at the moment, which is frustrating. Ultimately, as I say, if I think of the word product, I think of something which is extra and bolt-on and different. Okay. So what I'm really excited about is how you can embed the benefits into the existing. So form liners are really good because you need form liners in many cases. You end up with the same structure but with a better benefit. Similarly, rock armour, there are things which you could put within the rock armour which could enhance the gains. Again, that's something which would be useful to understand. So it's things which don't add but they replace. That's where I think really we should be focusing our energies, because then there's no argument not to. I think it's fundamentally the position that local authorities in particular have found themselves in, but Natural Resources Wales is exactly the same. The pressure on revenue budgets is extreme, Network Rail again, another massive potential opportunity. Again, pressure on revenue budgets. So if you can demonstrate what you are doing does not put pressure on revenue budgets, you're fine.
But the bottom line is cost. And if you can't value the added benefits to balance out additional cost, if there is additional cost, it's not going to be the preferred option.
Yeah.
All down to money, unfortunately. And there aren't all the other drivers. I don't think are strong enough at the moment to mean that those projects are the ones that get chosen.
When you're at that sharp edge of providing a solution for something, there is always the final discussion cost, of course, unless you're in such a niche market that nobody else does it and they have to introduce it, then that's a different story. But 9 times out of 10, they'll go for another solution if it's too expensive, and it happens all the time.
I think the biggest thing for me is if there were to be this being business as usual, so it's not something extra, it's something which there's who's done the best grey to green in a civil engineering project, who's the award for. How many fact sheets can we have which show different techniques and how they can be applied in different settings, coastal intertidal settings? I think that'd be a really, really good place to be in.
Having a conversation with a colleague about this last week, because we were trying to write almost exactly that for our area statement, and we were thinking really to the end of the first SMP epoch, roughly, which is 2025, so 5 years or so from now. And we were wondering whether seeing 10 nature-based solutions projects actually going in the water, as it were, over the next 5 years was enough or was too ambitious. And I think sadly, and that wasn't anything to do with whether they were successful or not. It was just getting them through the process.
Okay.
And I think sadly, at the end of the conversation, we decided that 10 sounded like a lot because we know that there are about these 20 or so locations where there's coastal risk management programme money going in that sort of time period. To get 10 of them to deliver something along the lines of nature-based solutions is a 50% success rate, and that seems quite unlikely. So we put 5 or 10 or something like that, but it's low numbers still.